Yes, hey, and thank you so much for having me at this online symposium. It's been some really exciting talks and inspirational as well. So it's intimidating to come after all of you, but I will do it anyway. So yes. So just quickly, I'm Anna from France, as you can hear with my accent, and I come from Paris. So I haven't had upbringing in contact with so much nature, but horses have actually been, I think, my first contact with animals, and it's always been in me, so to say. And I studied first at the University of Nanterre in Paris in human geography. And then I moved to Sweden to study master in social ecological resilience. And that's where I was able to connect back with the horses through my master thesis last year that I did with Wynan, who is here today and gave a super interesting presentation yesterday, and also with Paul. And just I can say quickly that for me, I think some interest I always have when I do research or even other aspects of my life is really to think how much agency do we each hold, how much power we have to change things, and also this human nature relationship that is established, and just that we even have a word for human and nature, and we seem to separate it. And I'm interested to see which bonds we can form or how we can rethink that more in a global North perspective, since that's where I'm from. So that's where I have a bit more understanding, I guess. And it's more also from a social perspective, I have more this background than technical or and so what I'm going to do today is to present my master thesis, how I did it, and also the results. And the name of the thesis, as you can see, was Farming with Draft Animals Using Retro Innovations for Sustainable Agrarian Development. And I based it on a case study in Italy, in northern Italy. And so to start with the sustainable agrarian development, I think for many people, probably not this audience, but many, when you think of that, people speak of drones and, those new tractors that are super electronics and smart. And we hear about precision agriculture, smart farming, all those words. And I think from me, I feel a bit doubtful sometimes of this, and is that really innovation? And I think we can maybe mix sometimes the word invention and innovation, because innovation can be more a new way to use some things. And in that sense, the retro innovation concept, I think, is very interesting, because it's just a different approach to innovation. Which consists in developing knowledge and expertise that combines elements and practices from the past and the present, and it configures them in new and future purpose. And in that case, the horse can be seen as a retro innovation, because it's we've been using horses or draft animals in farming for a very long time, and they are not the dominant discourse anymore, but they are still being used, and probably in different ways, or at least that's one thing I looked at, if they are used differently than they were before. And draft animals, as many of you, and it's been said before, but they reduce soil compaction and soil erosion on farm. And of course the carbon footprint as well. So there are so many benefits of having of working with draft animals, on a ecological point of view, but then maybe the social aspect, I didn't find it so much, at least in the scientific literature. And I was wondering a bit, okay, so who are these people who still decide to work with draft animals, even if it's not the common way to farm today? So my research question was, why are some farmers still working with draft animals? And that's in the context of Global North still. And it was really ethnographic studies. And I had two sub-questions that were a bit more practical, easy to put in practice, which were how do farmers use draft animals on their farms? So it's a way to see if they use it the same way than in the past, or if they use it only for farming or other activities as well. And how can farmers who use draft animals be characterized? Is it farmers who always farm that way? Newcomer farmers? Yeah. And one theory I used was the farming style theory, and within this theory I used the peasant concept from Van der Ploeg that I found very interesting. And with the farming style, it was a way to like understand the farmer's motivation, since that's, as I said earlier, like the agency and people's choice, and that's like really something I find fascinating. But also really, I think this theory enables to like not look only at the rational choice, but also the emotional, the habitual choice, the cultural choice, because yeah, I think it's been said before, but just to repeat, like farmers don't make only rational choice, and that applies, of course, not only to farmers, but to all other professions. So yeah, good to not just rationalize. And I think with this farming style theory, we can also see how farmers themselves, like how they understand their job, and also all the like globalization and market and technologies and so on that's happening, and how they can respond to it. And so now, speaking more of the peasant approach, that was something I read at the beginning, and I was like, oh, that sounds so interesting. And it's a peasant approach of farming. And again, the peasant word can seem a bit backward, but it's actually not, I think. And so in that way to farm, craftsmanship is at the heart of the practice of farming. And the aim is like to produce good yields, to have a good production. And to do so, there are four driving things that lead you to develop your crafts. And that's self-provision, high labor input, passion, and knowledge. So all those elements are required. And the short-term goal would be to still have a good, decent income that you can live off your farming. And the long-term goal is to develop a beautiful farm and free farm that's independent. And now to go back a bit more to what I practically did, or my case study, as I said, was Northern Italy. And it was, so I basically was in Northern Italy from, as you can see on the map, a bit all around the Po Valley and a little bit around Verona, really in the valley itself. So both mountains and valley. And I chose this case study because I was so lucky, thanks to Paul and the NGO, to have a local contact there that helped me a lot to find farmers. But then also it's like a coherent administrative and political landscape. So it's so that felt easier than having maybe Italy and France, where there are so many different things that come in. And then also, I think a part of me was a bit curious about Northern Italy, because the Po Valley is the most, it's one of the first place in Europe where industrial farming developed. So I was a bit curious to see how come you still have draft animal farmers there, even though it's one of the places where the tractor appeared first. And I met many draft animal farmers, but also some tractor farmers. And I had some local contacts that were expert in farming in Northern Italy and could explain me more about the case study and so on. And I met, in total, I went into 13 farms, and the two methods I used was in-depth semi-structural interviews and participant observation. So I had 11 recorded interviews, and then I had many informal discussions. I counted in total that I had quite long enough conversations with 42 people, some of them being, as I said, draft animal farmers, but some were the family or workers, clients as well, just to get an understanding of how people farm the way they do. And then, I had all those like walk-alongs, and I would walk around the farm and spend time with the farmers, sharing a meal. That really helped to like build trust, and also to really understand more their practice, and also to like maybe if you're like just sitting down at an interview with someone and you ask a question and they answer like very shortly on one topic because they don't think it's so important, and then you go out in the field with them and you see something more and you can ask. And so it was really useful to have this combination of methods. And I asked about the farm layout, the history, the geography, about what they produced, what they sell, why they decide to produce this specifically. And then, of course, I had a lot of questions about draft animal, why they worked with them, some challenges, the most rewarding aspect, and so on. And just to give a bit more like pictures and not just tables, you can see I saw a field with a farmer and his draft horse, so I got to try myself, which was really, really nice experience. Especially that I went back a few months after to that farm, and the field had it was blooming, so it was really nice. And also doing other activities that are not related to draft horses, but still help to see how people conduct their work. So it was really great experiences. But coming to the results, so I spoke of the peasant logic to farming earlier, with craftsmanship at the heart of it. And that's really something I could find with all those farmers. I should also say that I met draft animal farmers and tractor farmers, but at first I wanted to compare their practices, but I got so much data. Italian people are very talkative and are very giving with their time. So then I just focused on the draft animal farmers because I didn't have enough time to process everything. But I will dive a bit in those points you can see in the coming slides. So my first question was, how do farmers use draft animals on their farm? And all the farmers I met, they had either vegetable or cheese production as the main income. But those with the cheese production then use the draft animal in like for their own personal garden, and like just sometimes with the cheese production, but not much. And all the farmers, they used draft animals in combination with the tractors. And again, maybe for all of you who are like experts, it's maybe obvious, but I think for me and for many people who come from the city, or I really thought I would meet people who had draft animal, and then people who had tractors, and then people who had draft animals and tractors. But there it became really obvious that if you are doing draft animal farming, if farming is your main income, you do need a tractor, especially for transportation, to move things around, and even sometimes to move your animals, like your draft animals, around from field to fields if you're in the mountain, especially. So tractor is or seem to be necessary for those farmers. But the aim was to not use tractor on the field. Like around the farm is fine, but on the field you try to use like as little as possible the tractor, even if most of them still use tractors for plowing, but then they would like try as much as they could to use the draft animals. And all those farms were organic, and they all engage in pleury activities. So the farmers with the draft animals, they would use them both for activities like the vegetable production that is like a direct income for them, but they would also use them for logging. One of them used his draft animal for logging professionally, and he had like a license to like log with his horse. But otherwise, all the other farmers would do it for their own like self-sufficiency, or so it was just and then another aspect is that draft animals were used sometimes for like marketing purpose, in the sense that it's just nice to have an animal on the farm and people can come and look, and it's just like an attractor, and it helps, like it contributes to making the farm more attractive and more beautiful. That was important for the farmers. And how can those farmers themselves be characterized? That was really difficult. It was so many different kind of farmers that were deciding to farm for different reasons. But one thing that really united all those farmers, and that I think for me was very interesting, is that they all decided they were the first one to reintroduce draft animals on their farm. So some farmers had inherited the farms from their family, and they could remember some vague memories with the horses, maybe when they were like 5 years old or 6 years old, some when they were a bit older. Some knew that there had been horses or other draft animals on their farm, but they were not born yet. And then you had the other kind of farmers that were new farmers, and them either they just like started to farm and then got into draft animals, or they were like expert in like professional in horses, like horse breeding, and then they went into farming with the draft animals. But I thought that was important that all of them are the first one to say, okay, we are bringing back draft animals on the farm, because then it's really, to me, show how it's really an active decision. It's not just something you inherit or that's the only thing you know how to do, but you really think that's the way I want to farm. And if we discuss a bit now, so I was saying earlier that those farmers had a peasant way to farm, and I think this peasant approach of farming can be applied to how farmers relate to three things: technology, relationship, and stewardship. And first I will speak a bit of the technology aspect, that farmers were like, I thought it was really interesting how they reflected on technology, and I got lots of data on that. And for them, the point with technology is that it makes you independent, autonomous, that you can handle something yourself. So they spoke a lot of the quality of tools, for example, and I think that those qualities can also be applied to the qualities they look for in draft animals and in using draft animals and not tractors, because it would be that the tool has to be ergonomic, easy to use, that you can use it for many different things. And one aspect I found interesting is that also the tool should be easy to repair, meaning that the farmers have to be able, if it breaks, to repair it themselves. And I thought it was interesting, this aspect of maybe not wanting to have the best tool or the most modern tool, but just a tool that you can handle yourself. And as you can see maybe on the lower picture, the horse doesn't have, it's not only leather ropes everywhere, it's also those like this yellow, leather I meant, but there's also just some like basic rope. And the farmer explained that he had this because in case anything would happen, he would lose control, and the ropes would break, or he would have to break it themselves to cut them himself for safety. Then he would much rather cut those ropes and lose €5 and just buy some new and fix it than having to do that with leather and then having to pay so much more to fix it. But of course, I think one aspect in that, and when we think, because those farmers, they applied this to like, of course, draft animals, but also to like all the other things they were doing in their farms. But I think specifically on the draft animal, that's also maybe because there are not so many craftsmen in like leather and in all those like jobs that were maybe much more common before and are not anymore. So if you know that you will have to maybe order something from the US or even just like 3 hours away from your home, it's a long way. So you have to be able to depend on yourself. And now speaking more of the relationships, that was definitely one of the main aspects and motivation to work with the draft animal. It was the relationship you built with the draft animal. That farmers explained as being the most rewarding aspect of the job and why it was so worth it. And in comparison, they also, most of those farmers really didn't appreciate working with tractor, but there I think you can also see a difference how I did meet some tractor farmers who were like really liked their tractor and had like some ways to relate with it like that you could almost like that they also see it as more than a tool. So it's, I think we also have to accept that maybe some people just like are also very much into tractors. But back to the horses, which interest me more. So this relationship, I think what was very interesting was that it was a relationship of respect and of exchange, and really of like companionship, that the horse or the draft animal take an active part in the job and is like participating in the job. And in that sense, farmers wanted to really have a relationship where you like treat each other as work colleague, so they wouldn't they wouldn't pet them like you would pet your dog or your cat. Of course, now you can see on the left picture, when you are done working, then it's completely fine. But when you work, it's like you're working. You don't stop every time, or because you do need to get things done. And I really also could see myself, since I was lucky that some farmers took me to the field and I worked with them, and I could really see how one farmer at the beginning was very stressed. He had a very long day. And so the first 5 minutes with the horse, I could really feel how stressed he was still. But then it just like changed, and then he became so calm, and it was so incredible to see. And I can just relate that to some people yesterday sharing how draft animal is also like, could be sort of, I think someone said therapy, or like a mental well-being, something like this. And there I could really feel it myself, and I think that's an interesting aspect of it. And finally, on stewardship, so on like caring, many farmers define themselves as farmer caretaker. That's like directly translating from Italian. That's I guess the best way to translate. And so for them, farming with draft animal, it was really a mean to achieve sustainability, to be more sustainable. It was not just, oh, I farm with my draft animals, so I'm doing great. It's like always looking how to improve, how to do things better. And that would be not just with the draft animal, but with many other aspects. And again, also with this idea of like not just making my field better, but also how to make my territory better, how to make my community better, how to create a community and develop a community. And those aspects were very strong. And those aspects were also very connected to the past, especially in the mountains, where you have the picture is not great, sorry, on the bottom right or bottom left, but you can maybe guess a bit the terrace. And those have been man-made for many years, and that's a story of a lot of struggle as well. So those farmers, they really wanted to celebrate that and to keep them alive. Then, of course, there's an aspect of erosion that some farmers are really aware that in other parts of Italy, the terraces are just like crumbling down, and that's creating lots of landslide and issues. But so for them, that was like this like practical present aspect of we need to preserve from erosion, but also we need to preserve for like our ancestors' memory and hardships. And all of this was always connected to future generations as well, and to wanting to be able to, like one farmer said, when I give the land, it's like I want it to be almost like I haven't been there. Like you can't see I've been exploiting it, because it shouldn't be like this. So like a really strong awareness as well. And so many people have, I think, like Stephen Leslie books are really good about like how to get into draft animals farming and the things you should know. And maybe one thing that I don't remember I read there, but maybe I did, but that I saw a lot in the study that I did, is that if you have other animals on the farm, it's probably easier as a newcomer to get a horse, because you already have a lot of animals to care for and to produce food for. And if you're a newcomer and the horse or donkey is your only animal, maybe that's a bit more like, just a bit like more heavy in terms of labor and so on. And then speaking more of like the CAP, the Common Agricultural Policy, farmers had a lot to say about this, and they like were really aware of the process and so on. And for them, a way that the CAP could help them better would be to really value the quality of the food produced and not the amount. And that, I think, would be something for draft animal farmers at small scale, but also for like other organic small scale farmers, that would be a benefit. And then about customer, like the clients, the customers as well. I think there's like, and again, now if I, speak from my perspective of being interested in eating well and eating organic, but coming from the city, I think there's like a huge lack of awareness from customers about what it takes to produce food and the amount of time and labor, and understanding why something costs more than others, and also accepting that and wanting to value that over other cheap food. Of course, if you can afford it, since not everyone can. And now, just very quickly on this, because I see I'm almost out of time, but I focused only on farmers who owned draft animals, and in the vineyards, they often hire people. So I think there it would be interesting also to meet people who use draft animals on their farms, but they don't own it themselves. Maybe they have different motivation of using them. And something else as well I thought is that some farmers told me about other farmers that had tried draft animal traction and had failed. And I think it would be really interesting to meet those people and to understand, okay, why did you want to start? And why did you fail? Because if we understand why these people, like someone who is motivated but fail, if we understand what we could have done to help them, to develop the draft animal, we can find like, maybe it's a way to like understand better, okay, how can we help those farmers and so on. And yeah, so just in conclusion, the draft animal farmers, they take a peasant approach to farming. It's an individual decision to come back to draft animal, because they don't think the tractor does a good enough job. And I think we can, with this, rethink a bit of technology and innovation and what is actually innovation, not just those like new super high-tech things. And also reflect on the role of non-humans in sustainability transformation, because we often see them as more passive. And for those farmers, the draft animals are like really taking an active part in the work. And maybe a bit more philosophical or personal, I don't know, conclusion is that I think for me, a big, like really a huge aspect of or a big learning for me is that many farmers spoke about doing a good job, and that's what was really driving them, to make sure that they are doing a good job. But also a lot of farmers said, I don't mind if I have to wake up very early. I don't mind if I have to do those things. I don't mind, because it's like, I'm so happy I'm doing that. I'm like, I feel on, like some even said they felt on holidays. And I think someone said that as well yesterday, that it didn't feel like work what they do, but still it is work. So I think for me it's a good, what I took the most out of it is really a reflection on how, like, I'm 25 and how I want to like do my work later in life as well. And I think I got so inspired from them. So for this, I'm like super grateful.